All right. So, um, I need to get ready for the Esri Developer Summit, which is coming up. It's like a little over a month away. Today is, my gosh, what is today? Today is February 5th. DevSummit starts March 12th to 15th. So I have to be ready some point in there. So we are going to go over some of the stuff I need to do a little planning. I think I do this every year. I actually go through and will record video of some of my planning for DevSummit stuff that I do. So if you want to see it, cool. If not, then I know this might be a little boring to you, but I don't think so. I'll show some cool stuff, and I won't do a whole lot today. Um, just some basics done. So what is it that I'm doing? I have a session here. This first one. I actually have three sessions. So I've got getting started with the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript components. I've got programming patterns API fundamentals and best practices for building apps. Now I'm not doing any of these alone. I do have co-presenters I am doing these with. So I will be consulting with them, figuring out who's going to do what, who's going to cover what at some point. So I'm just kind of shooting at the hip at what it is I think I need to cover. So let's get started with map components one. This one's kind of cool. This is a live streamed session. So you can ask questions online for the session if you sign up for the Dev Summit. It's also in person. It's also recorded, so you can watch it later. I'm presenting with Omar here. He is my product engineer for this project, the components, web component stuff. So he's got some pretty in-depth knowledge when it comes to web components, especially the map components that I work on. It's a beginner level session, so this is typically where I begin to struggle with how I prepare my sessions. Like my videos, I tend to talk a lot, so I kind of will carry on here and there. So things like this video, preparing like this, also helps me out to make sure that I don't ramble too much, which I've probably already done at this point. Now, if you're not familiar with the components in the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript, they kind of augment the Maps SDK, right? If you read the description here, learn how you can use the SDK's map and widgets wrapped as web components to kickstart your journey in building web map applications. Now, I'm really not a big fan of this right here, the widgets wrapped as web components line. I get why we need to talk about it. It helps users specifically that already are familiar with the Maps SDK kind of understand the features that they get out of the web components, right? I am talking about some things that aren't in the current release, but will be in the release coming up at the end of the month, as well as things that are part of our next release. So we have latest and next on NPM for the components, and I'll show you that in a second. But if you're not familiar with the components themselves, you can go under here, the components beta. Yes, we're still beta, right? Because tweaking some things here and there. But the basic idea being that you can install the package at ArcGIS Map Components, and you can just add a component to your page like this, right? ArcGIS Map, give it an item ID, and boom, you're good to go, right? There's also coded components, which includes the arcade editor, which is technically the main component you can use right now. This common components is going away. You can ignore common components, right? It's not going to stick around. Beta, all right, people. There's like a get started in here, and this is still valid for the current 428 release. It's going to change a little bit for 429. I'm going to go over some of that stuff in here. Our API documentation is part of the storybook. I think I've talked about this in previous videos, just kind of quickly before. So it's got information tutorials, get started part, links to specific storybooks for the map components, coding, and like I said, comment's going to go away. We're doing something else in that particular case. So I'm using Living Spec to kind of manage my stuff myself, right? And also let me go ahead and share this with my, like Omar, my collaborator, if I need to. We're actually technically working in a Word doc inside of our SharePoint and everything, but I actually do like to use Living Spec to kind of get some things out and organize, right? So basically, I just copied the description. I have a link to the page for the session just so I can always refer to it if I need to. Okay, so I have an audience profile for saying it's beginner level experience, but basically saying it's for people that have a beginner level experience using the Maps SDK for JavaScript, right? So I don't expect you to be a professional or advanced level developer. You should have some level of web development experience. So if you show up for this session, this isn't like brand new to web development. Maybe some of it would apply to those users, but really I'm kind of hoping that you at least know a little bit about using JavaScript and HTML to really kind of dive in and get the most you can out of the components, right? Maybe you've used ArcGIS Core to build applications, and maybe this one, maybe I don't know. Just use ArcGIS Core. Maybe that's not so much to build apps. What else would you do with it though, right? So familiarity with ArcGIS Core. Let's go with that. And you're a professional with some development experience. So I'm assuming that if you're at DevSummit or if you're registered for DevSummit, I guess I really can't assume this, right? So I'm just gonna say some development experience, because you know what? I'm thinking there might be students and stuff as well in the. Let's get rid of this completely. I already have some web development experience up there. There might be students in the crowd or online, so maybe I shouldn't focus so much on professional level stuff, right? So, and here's what I expect you to walk away from if you come to the session. It's kind of a lot, I think. There's a lot to it. I'm working with Omar on this and how I think we can nail some of this stuff down. Basically, I have an hour. It's like between 50 to 55 minutes realistically of content, and need to leave like a few minutes for questions and stuff like that. So I'll be doing a basic intro to web components. So it's basically going to cover stuff like, how do you create a web component like vanilla wise? So extending HTML element with a class and stuff like that. I'm not going to be covering lifecycle bits. I don't think that's really worthwhile. One tag, one features, right? So I'm kind of talking about how you can encapsulate functionality in your components, right? So I think that's really like the main thing here. And I've kind of done this before. I actually showed this at was last year's DevSummit maybe. So basically, this is an app which has some components, vanilla web components, wrapped as wrapping some of the Maps SDK stuff, right? So I've got a nearby map that's going to extend HTML element. So basically, I'm going to extend HTML element, and I've got a view. I've got a layer view with the type here. I do some stuff in my constructor to turn on, turn on shadow DOM, or to add some styles, some templates, some items. I have a connected callback where I initialize the map. It means as soon as the components add to the page, create the map, disconnect the callback, empty in this particular case here. Something to add to styles, my CSS, add the template, which is the kind of thing you need to do for custom elements. So maybe I'll show this in my DevSummit session just to kind of give you an idea of how you could have done this to begin with on your own, right? I got some functionality in here very specific to what this map component is supposed to do, like be able to convert these items into graphics and add them to the map or do queries on them or something like that, right? So that'll help initialize, create a map, and adding search widget and all this stuff. So maybe I'll show this as my kind of like vanilla intro to web components, kind of stuff that you would do if you're writing web components from scratch. And or if you can use them from scratch. And that's not really the goal of the session. Isn't to teach you how to write web components from scratch. That's not the goal. The goal is to show you how you can use the map components for the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript to build stuff, or to get maybe saying how to build something is a little carried away, because again, this is a beginner level session. It's more to get you familiar with them and how to use them and do things with them. So I think that's probably a better way of saying it. So I'm gonna have a slide on that kind of stuff. This will only take like 5 minutes. This bit here, right? I've got a schedule I've kind of laid out down here. So like understanding components is like 5 minutes for intro. It's probably just gonna be a minute between me and Omar introducing ourselves. So this gives me like 5 to 10 minutes, but I hope to only do 5 minutes. I want to spend most of my time in this benefits of components, as well as a couple of demos, like 10 minutes for a vanilla app, and maybe 10 to 15 minutes for like a React app, and maybe even Angular, showing that as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go and dive into a little bit of demo stuff in here. I've got 2 folders here, basic and React, right? So let's do the basic. Okay, so I need to first install ArcGIS Map Components Next. All right, so there's a lot of changes in Next that are not in the latest release for the map components. So, okay, this is gonna take a little bit. I probably should have done this beforehand. Okay, so installed that, and I believe it's gonna install all the other packages that are needed as well. Yeah, okay. Let's clean this up. This is a default Vite application, right? All right, so we have our style, CSS. Now I need to get some elements on the page here. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. Let's come over here. Let's see. Let's take this. All right, what's that do? Oh, hey, look at that. I didn't notice that. Yeah, we're gonna add that. You know, I'm not a big fan of self-closing tags. I'll be honest with you. I just feel like they've every now and then caused issues for me. And I don't know why exactly, but I don't trust them. I'm old now. What do you want? Come on. All right. I got issues. All right. So that, you know, I probably should, okay. I was going to say maybe I should add some CSS for my ArcGIS map, but I don't think I have to. If I remember right, I make this 100% by default. So it'll fill up the container I put it in, and the app I made 100% width and height. So it should fill up the app, right? So, okay. So I still need to import map. So I'm using map. Okay, so right now that's all, should be all I have to do. No, I forgot one thing. So let's come over here. All right, so now it should, I got my CSS. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so here is that same web map with the item ID. And the web map should have pop-ups defined already. So yeah, look at that. We got some pop-ups in here. Pop-ups got some charts. Cool, easy enough to do, right? So it's a very simple demo to highlight, right? So I didn't do anything other than import the ArcGIS maps, right? So all right, I'm gonna do one other thing here. So I'm gonna do something like let's say here, right? So I've got my map element with a query selector, and now what I want to do is one of the things I want to show is a pattern for the map element. The map and the scene. This is gonna be true in both cases. The map and the scene have a property called ready on them, right? And when ready is true, that pretty much means that you have access to a bunch of properties on the map. I'm sorry, on the map element that you can do some things with, right? It is a view component. That's what we refer to. It's a view component, and we bubble up a bunch of properties from the underlying map view to the element. So when it ready is true, you can, you know, start using it, do some stuff. There's also an event listener called ArcGIS View Ready Change. Now, in a vanilla application, it is possible you might miss the event listener if you're doing some other like async work before you add it. So the pattern I recommend, is you should always do something like this. If map element dot ready, let's just say if map element. Okay, so if it's not ready, then I want to add an event listener. That is not the event listener I want. I think the typings will give it to me. ArcGIS view ready change. And it's trying to tell me the map element can be null. I'm going to say no, it can't. I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone. Map is ready, right? So if I go ahead and boom, do it like that. Map was map element.ready was false. So I had to add an event listener and go ahead and console.log it out. If I come over here though, what I can do is I can say that else console.log map is ready. I don't know. Immediately. So okay, so we did need the event listener. So I got the event listener. The map was not ready, and now I can start doing some things, right? So what I can do here is I can grab the event, and maybe I want, I don't know, what do I want? Back over here. All right, so here's my element. It's got the view inside of it. I'm trying to think of what would be a good things to grab off of here. Okay, I'm actually going to talk about another one. So basically, this means that the map is ready for stuff, whatever. Now there is another event that you can use. So let's get rid of this E since I'm not using it here. There's another event that you could use that we're going to listen for. And see if it'll pick. I'm going to TypeScript help me out here because I forget the name exactly. So it's ArcGIS. Ready? No. It's view change. Here we go. So view change is an interesting one. View change. Now, okay, I don't care about detail. There's nothing on the details on these because everything is on the element, right? So maybe I'm interested in the zoom. So current zoom is 9. Now if I change this, now it's 10, right? Moving around, moving around. Now it does change a few more times than you might expect, right? And I'll tell you why in a second that happens. Basically, what this does is it will it'll fire whenever view.stationary, the element.stationary property becomes true. Okay, so with the map components, because they're actual DOM elements, you cannot use reactive utils with them like you can from ArcGIS Core, the Maps SDK, right? The reason that reactive utils works in ArcGIS Core and the Maps SDK is because everything inside ArcGIS Core is based off of the accessor class, which is a way that ArcGIS Core can watch for property changes and do all kinds of really cool stuff, right? But regular DOM elements, you can't do that. And this is one thing I'm going to bring up in the getting started here. I have a thing for down here. I guess I'm talking more about patterns for using view component and stuff. We've got some limitations in here. So like mutation observers, right? I want to write a sample how you could use it to watch component properties. But there are some limitations with the mutation observer. Basically, a mutation observer can only watch for Boolean, string, or number attributes that are actually written to the DOM element. So if there are properties of the web component that are not reflected back to the element, then mutation observer is not going to work. So for example, if the graphics, which is an array or collection of graphics that are part of the map element, which is proxied from the underlying view.graphics, if those graphics change, you cannot use mutation observer to watch for them to change because they're an object, right? They're either an array or a collection from ArcGIS Core. A collection is not going to work. I'm sorry, mutation observer is not going to work on that. Mutation observer will work on I believe the updating property that is on the map element because that gets reflected back to the map component. So ArcGIS Map will have an updating property. So if I look at elements here, here's my map, move it around. So you see a little updating property right there, highlighted, and then it goes away, right? So as I'm interacting with the map itself is updating. So it's pulling data from the edges and stuff, the layer to draw things. It's currently doing some kind of work internally, and then it stops updating, right? You can use Mutation Observer for that. Same goes for the zoom. The zoom is well, it's a number, but or string technically on the component. You can have Mutation Observer for that to watch when it changes. Okay, but not for any object. Complex objects, Mutation Observer won't work. Crap, what was my point? ArcGIS View Change. So ArcGIS View Change is based off of watching the stationary property of the element to become true. When that happens, internally, we update the map element scale, extent, zoom, and viewpoint and scene camera to the latest values that they are under the hood. Right now, at that point, when ArcGIS View Change fires, is when we suggest that you grab those if you need to use them for anything. And a lot of people will use extent to do like a query on some stuff, which probably isn't great to use an extent for your query because it's not really cacheable if you're doing it, especially on feature layer queries, because it changes. It's not tiled, right? It's not a cacheable query. But you can use it for something else, I guess. Maybe the layer view stuff, and you want to do some filtering on the layer view. So it's like the two main events, and then of course you can always grab some of the other events that are on the elements. So, all right, so this is an interesting one because click. I don't trust you, Copilot. Okay, so here it got it right. So the event detail is actually going to be a view click event from the underlying view. And that means it'll have something like the map point on it, right? So let's go and save this. Now, if I come back over here and I click on the map somewhere, so here's my click event, which is my pop-up, and this is going to have the map point on it. There's a bunch of events available on here. So again, if I do map element, you can see them all in the typings once I start actually typing and do ArcGIS. So all the events that are on the map components, almost all of them, are going to be with the name ArcGIS something, right? Now, this doesn't apply to some of the components, like a trigger action event. So trigger action is not going to be called ArcGIS layer list trigger action because there's also trigger action on base map layer list. So it would be really tedious to have to write ArcGIS base map layer list trigger action. So the way we did is that those are called just like layer list trigger action, base map layer list trigger action. I mean, it's still kind of long for the event name, but I think it's easier to do than having ArcGIS in front of all of those. But except on the views, it kind of made sense to do because they have a lot of native names, and we didn't want any like possible conflicts between like a view key down event somewhere that is not an ArcGIS component. It's some other component, right? So we've got the click, we've got the view change, that view ready change I talked about, drag hold, double click, pointer down, pointer leave, blah, 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 blah. There's a layer view create, so you might be familiar with this on the view if you want layer views as they're being created. There's an event for that. There's an event for layer view destroy. And there's also an event if there's like an error in creating layer views, you can capture those as well. All right. Okay, so that was part one for this particular video on the intro to map components, preparing for my DevSummit session. Worked all the way up to events, map components, and the next video I'm going to show on bringing in some of the other components to work with the view and how you could do some of that. So we'll take a break for now, and watch out for the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. Do you like these videos where I'm just preparing for my DevSummit sessions, right? And covering some of the material that I think I'm going to want to cover, whatnot. So give me your feedback. Help me make a better session. Appreciate it. Thanks.